In 2018, I put about 60 hours into Dead Cells on the Nintendo Switch, and it was my game of the year for the platform. However, can the fast-paced, incredible melee combat and careful exploration of one of the best roguelikes in years carry over to a touchscreen experience? Let's find out. I'm the Flannel Fox Tim Swiernik, and I reviewed Dead Cells on iOS. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button and follow me on Twitter at TheFlannelFox. If you've never played Dead Cells before, it's a roguelike platformer with some of the best 2D melee combat that I've ever played. The character that you play is and has been trying to escape the prison he's currently contained in by traversing the enemy-ridden and procedurally generated levels and defeating the bosses. As you play through each run, you collect cells, which are used between levels to purchase new weapons and mutations to assist you in your deadly journey. So in each run, once you have unlocked a new weapon, then you have the chance to acquire different versions of this weapon out in the wild. So in one run, you may be wielding a turret that fires flaming bolts, accompanied by a sword that does extra damage to burning enemies, while the next, you may have a bow that shoots poison arrows that penetrates all enemies, allowing you to quickly clear entire screens of foes. While the gists of the levels become quite familiar, they don't get all too repetitive. Similar to something like Enter the Gungeon, the real beauty of this game comes from the in-depth knowledge that you gain in learning the enemy's attack patterns and the ins and outs of each type of level. As they're randomly generated, you won't know the exact routes, however, you learn the level characteristics and how to work around them. While on console, this is a near perfect game. This review is specifically of the iOS version that utilizes touchscreen controls, and that changes the experience greatly. I'm going to break down the controls into 3 separate groups: attacks, jumping and dodging, and character movement. So initially when I heard about this port, what I was most concerned about were the combat buttons. Shooting bows, tossing throwing knives, and sword swiping seemed like that would be a huge undertaking with touch only. Finding the right button at the right moment without the guidance of button feel seemed tough. However, they nipped that in the bud very quickly. With a mobile-specific auto attack, so your character will use one melee attack whenever in the close proximity of an enemy, which works very nicely, and we get used to the mechanics. It really takes a lot of the heavy lifting off of the mobile experience. You can also play in original mode, which allows you to access the button manually, just tapping an allotted area on the screen as you would a regular button, which you do for your secondary attack and 2 abilities in both modes. It's not terrible besides the occasional push mid-battle when things get chaotic. Now onto the left joystick that controls the character's movement. Giving you 2 different options for the joystick, you can choose a floating joystick, which allows you to press your thumb down wherever you want, and the joystick will be initialized from that location, then work from there until you lift it up again for the position to be reestablished. While this is the option that I typically prefer for mobile games, for a game where you're climbing up and down so frequently, it becomes very hard to control using this method, and you'll go a lot of places that you didn't really plan to. So I went with the fixed joystick position and had a much easier time controlling my character. Now, it will take time to get into the swing of things, and in my opinion, a touch joystick is still miles behind a real joystick, so keep that in mind before purchasing, because at moments in this game, you'll be surrounded by enemies all shooting projectiles and swiping blades towards you, and you will have to do some slick maneuvering to get out of that sticky situation, and it's really, really frustrating to die feeling that the touch input had most to do with it, making you feel like you're walking in snow, performing something with your thumb that would typically work, but just doesn't with this input. However, like anything else, you will get better at it the longer that you use it. Now on to the hop and roll, as jumping and dodging are a huge part of this game, and with every well-placed enemy attack, you'll need a well-timed jump or dodge to avoid it. Jumping works well, but is connected to the left joystick, so you have to get that down really well to master the mechanic. For things like a jump to a ground slam, where you have to hold down on the left joystick to perform it, it took me a while to get a hang of, and maneuvering out of tight spots with a directional jump still doesn't execute always as I've planned. The roll has a lot of the same issues as the jump, giving that you can roll left or right depending on which the left joystick is facing, so it's a tough one to get down because it's hard to know exactly where your thumb is in relation to the center point of the touch joystick. They do give you an alternative input option for the dodge button, which is a dodge swipe, using your right thumb to swipe the right side of the screen, either left or right, to perform that directional dodge, which seems nice. However, the real estate over there is quite crowded, and I more often than not found myself hitting multiple buttons at once. Fortunately, a nice overarching feature is that for each controller scheme set, original and auto attack, you can edit the size and position of all of your buttons, which really helps. I give myself a little more space around each of my attack buttons in order to really bump up my dodge button, making things a lot easier to work with. The graphics have received some downgrades, which have simplified many characters in the game, but overall it still looks good. Worse than the game running in handheld on the Nintendo Switch, but with the art style, it still does work. Furthermore, it runs pretty good. Just like on the Nintendo Switch, when you get a lot of characters on screen, it's gonna chug a little bit, but none that really affect my combat situation. A big issue for me, and one that really ticks me off with iOS games, some do it, some don't, is that it doesn't allow you the option to listen to other audio in the background of the game. Other iOS ports, for example, give you the option to turn down the background music and play your own, or listen to a podcast, audiobook, etc., which Dead Cells does not do. And if I'm playing something on my iPhone, I want to listen to a podcast or an audiobook. It's just the way that I roll. While this can be annoying, the music in Dead Cells is absolutely fantastic. At moments when you just don't know if you can do it, which happen a lot because this game is a tough one, especially if you're playing with touch input, it can give you just the right amount of gusto to go into that next battle, bows blazing. Overall, this is an amazing game that has been ported to the iOS with fantastic customization options, but because of the nature of this game, it's still a much different experience than if you were to play with an analog controller. Even after hours of playing on my iPhone, I'd see a pickup across the level, and while I just want to go pick it up so bad, the controls are so fatiguing, I would just leave it on the other side of the level and continue exploring from that point on, which is not a good thing. You need to be able to check every nook and cranny and explore and do what you need to do in this game. And if you have that fatiguing sort of drag on you that make navigating and searching this level a slog, that's a big downgrade. However, if you don't own a gaming console that you can play this fantastic game, it's a good alternative, but leaves a lot to be desired as far as Twitch response gaming goes, and I would still recommend, if you want to play Dead Cells the appropriate way, get yourself an analog controller. That's why I'm giving Dead Cells on the iOS a 7.5 out of 10. If you enjoyed this video review of Dead Cells on iOS, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, TheFlannelFox, and on Twitter at TheFlannelFox. Be sure to follow and subscribe, because the more followers and subscribers I get, the more codes I get, which means I make more videos. Thank you to Motion Twin for providing me with this review copy and making Dead Cells, which is an incredible game, and on the Nintendo Switch, which I didn't review it, I would have given it a much higher score. Thanks for watching my videos, and as always, see you next time, gamers.